Yeah, so I think the important thing, man, is to do it for yourself, right? Is to, be self-motivated, not to have this need to impress other people, but really to get to that point in your life where you are focused primarily on impressing yourself, doing it for yourself, first and foremost. It doesn't mean that other people don't matter, that other things don't motivate you, that maybe people that challenge you don't motivate you, the people that want you to fail might motivate you. Maybe it's your family on the positive side. Your family motivates you, your friends motivate you, the people that work around you or for you or with you motivate you. But doing it for yourself is the single most important thing, and the single most important point that you can get to in your life is to get to that point where you don't need anybody else's motivation, right? Everything that you have kind of within you is enough to get you out of bed in the morning, to get you excited, to get you motivated to go do whatever it is that you need to do. When it comes down to your legacy, you're always going to be remembered for those things that really you did for yourself, right? And there's different things at different points in your life that are going to motivate you, that are going to come down to, what is it that got you through that particular season? Is it your friends? Is it your family? Is it the naysayers, those people that don't want you to succeed? And that creates enough resistance that it motivates you to be able to push through that. And ultimately, all of those things come together and create what becomes a crystal clear legacy. So it's important to realize not just that you're doing it for yourself, but what is it exactly that you are doing for yourself? Getting clear on those things that you want to create into your legacy, right? There's a list of things that are important to all of us, but if we don't spend a little bit of time every single day writing those things down, really thinking about the long-term impact of them, and constantly growing that list of things that contribute to our legacy, then maybe our legacy becomes created by accident. And wouldn't that be a shame, right? To spend your entire life creating something and look back and say, like, man, that's not even what I wanted to create. I intended to have a completely different legacy. But so many people don't spend that time every day, that 30 minutes of quiet time every day that kind of clears your mind and gets you pointed in the right direction, so that ultimately at the end of your life, you look back and say to yourself, like, man, good job, man. So what are your goals, right? That's an interesting question. What are your goals? And what is it, not just what are your goals, but what is it that drives those goals to come to fruition? When you set a goal, it can't just be a number. It can't just be something that you write down on a piece of paper. But when you're really doing it for yourself, when you're really self-motivated, that goal has to be attached to some sort of emotion that you see when that result happens, right? When you get to the point of seeing that result and you can get down into the details of what it feels like when you reach that goal, when you get over that plateau, and you can close your eyes and you can imagine or visualize, a lot of people call it visualization, but you can imagine the emotions and the feeling of that achievement. That is where ultimately goals become crystal clear and they become extremely achievable and almost impossible not to achieve, because number one, you don't need any outside motivation. You're doing it for yourself. Number two, you're able to create that emotion. So when you start to hit adversity, when you start to hit those rough patches that are really difficult for you to overcome, you can go right to that place, that feeling of accomplishment that you get when you accomplish that goal, and it absolutely refocuses you and gets you right back on track to that point of doing it for yourself and being able to achieve that goal. Literally in an instant, you can change your entire state, your entire being back into that motivated version of yourself that's doing it for yourself, doing it for whatever reason you have that motivates you ultimately, and that creates an unstoppable force that you can achieve any goal that you want. When you're setting your goals, it's also important to realize that you need both short-term goals, I call them sprint goals, and then long-term goals, marathon goals, to kind of keep you on track, right? Because if you have nothing but marathon goals, it gets really difficult for you to stay motivated. So if you set those little short sprint goals, you start to create momentum from those, right? And those little goals will keep you on track to reaching that big goal. So you set those little kind of check-in points that are just short little sprint goals that you can accomplish something, you can feel good about yourself, and that gets you just a little bit closer every single time you accomplish one of those to your long-term marathon goal, but also creates that momentum that you need to be able to feel accomplished on your pursuit to the bigger goal. So what the voice inside your head is going to tell you is all kinds of things that aren't true, right? When you're on this mission of like accomplishment, doing things that you always wanted to do, the dreams that you had as a little boy or a little girl, those voices inside your head are going to come back constantly, trying to drag you back to that previous version of yourself, or the version of yourself when you were growing up, and that blueprint that kind of existed when you were a kid, or when you were at your first job, or you were being trained by the first person that ever trained you professionally. Or maybe it's the blueprint of your industry that is telling you that you shouldn't be doing a certain thing, right? And that voice inside your head is going to be the number one thing that you have to focus on defeating. Because once you're able to quiet that voice inside of your head, you can accomplish almost anything. Like nothing is going to stop you. More dreams are crushed by you than will ever be crushed by an outside force. It is you versus you more than it will ever be anything else outside of it. Any outside influence, any person that wants you to fail, any challenge that you might face or patch of adversity or season of difficulty, it is always going to be the voice inside your head that you are really arguing against. And once you are able to control that or quiet that voice, you are able to take on any goal that comes in front of you, and you're able to systematize it, break it down into segments of how you accomplish it. What is the first step? How do you keep going? What happens when you hit that adversity? And when you have big enough goals, that voice inside your head gets a little bit more quiet, right? So the bigger you set your goals, the more you're able to control that voice inside of your head, because the adversity is nothing compared to the destination of where you're headed. And so as you start to understand, you start to actually hear that voice inside your head, it's important for you to be able to recognize that that's what's happening, and create those triggers for yourself so that you can ultimately pass right past that voice in your head and keep going on the ultimate destination of where you're going. You know, sometimes the people that are closest to us are those people that are ultimately, sometimes putting that voice in our heads. So for example, when I was ready to start my company, the Pavement Group, I'd had a couple of children already. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and so I was the only income. And so stepping out and starting a new business is extremely risky. And I remember that conversation with my parents and them saying, man, are you sure about this? What happens if this doesn't succeed, right? Where are you going to be? And I was standing in the entryway of the house that I live in today, and I remember having this conversation with my dad, and my dad saying like, what happens, if this doesn't work? And I said, well, I guess we'll be having that conversation in a different house. But ultimately, you have to recognize those things that are being placed into your life, those challenges that people may plant as seeds unknowingly. Like my parents obviously want the very best for me. They want me to succeed. But people are always going to, first and foremost, try to put you in a safe place as opposed to the place that maybe you need to be able to grow. And so those seeds of doubt can be planted in your head unknowingly by other people. And you might, if you're not careful and you don't recognize them, you might water those seeds and they might grow into thoughts that are repetitive, right? Time after time, you keep thinking to yourself, what if this doesn't work? What if this doesn't work? Or you can just boil it down to the worst case scenario, go straight there and say, well, in the worst case scenario, right, I'm still going to be here. I learned a lot, and I get to move on from that failure with a lot of lessons, which are extremely valuable in your journey of life. And you have to press through those things regardless of the circumstances. So don't ever let anybody, including those people that are closest to you that sometimes plant those seeds, don't ever let anybody stop you from pursuing those things that are most important to you. When you think about perspective and when it comes down to, doing things for yourself, not needing those outside influences, and how do you shift that perspective to be able to get there? For me, there was just a period in my life, for the first probably 38 or 39 years of my life, I was really, trying to impress other people in a lot of ways, right? I was really focused on what people thought, what people would think if I did certain things. And so a lot of my motivation did come from outside influences, right? From me constantly being evaluating the things that are going on around me or how people were viewing the things that I was doing. And when it got to a point of that wasn't enough for me to get to the next level, and I started looking at the people that I admired, and I started looking at those mentors that I had, and what I noticed consistently in all of them is that they didn't need any outside motivation. And so that really shifted my perspective to realize that I was capping myself by being motivated by outside influences. That if I really dug deep and I really figured out what was motivating me, that would shift my view of things. It would shift my perspective to be able to just be self-motivated, right? To be able to wake up every day and realize that if I could just make an impact on several people every single day, that was enough, right? And that money would follow those results of making an impact on people, making a difference in people's lives. The money part of success always follows that result of making an impact, of solving problems, of helping people, of making a difference in other people's lives. The success that most people view, which is the financial success, the material things, it always follows the good deeds that start off. And so you start by shifting your perspective to be motivated by whatever it is that ticks inside of you that really gets you out of bed in the morning. And so if you haven't figured that out yet in your life, that's the best place to start. Once you figure that out, your entire perspective will shift, and you will start to be self-motivated by those things every single day. And then the ultimate success, as how society views it, ultimately follows that. So one exercise that I have personally done that has created massive success on the path of reaching goals and being able to do it for yourself, I actually got from a video that I watched of Steve Harvey. And Steve talks about writing down 300 things that you want in your life, right? And so when I did this exercise, I got to like maybe number 75, and it started to get really, really difficult as to come up with all of these things that you want in your life, all of these mini goals, if you will, that you want. And what Steve said in the video was, man, everybody can think of 300 things that they could use in their life. So don't quit when it gets difficult, right? Push through that. And what happened for me is right around number 200, I started to get to those really deep-rooted things that were really, really important to me that I really never even spent any time thinking about, because I was so focused on the surface level goals that most people set, right? The really simple things that are on the surface that everybody talks about. But what's really important to you will start to come out as you get deep into that 200, 250 range. And then you start to really figure out like what is important to me. One of those things for me is being able to travel with my family everywhere I go. I do a lot of traveling. And so as I travel, I miss my family. So what if I could set those goals that I could take my family with me? What does that look like? And so that came out around number 250 for me. And that goal completely changed my perspective on what I needed to do to be able to accomplish that, what I needed to do to be able to cover the expense of that. And so I challenge you guys to definitely do that exercise of writing down 300 things that you would want in your life. It will change your perspective completely on what is actually important and what real goals really look like.